Welcome to this epic disaster. That was like the worst
That was horrible.
Dracula impression that I've ever done.
I thought you were having a stroke.
I was a little bit.
Okay.
This is the Halloween edition of This Epic Disaster. See, that's why I was trying to do a vampire.
This is the Halloween edition of This Epic Disaster.
No, that was worse than mine.
Fuck you.
So much worse than mine. We should have just done Frankenstein's monster. I could do that.
And I understood it.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome to the Halloween version of This Epic Disaster. It's kind of like the regular version, only this one is so much scarier.
It's going to be way scarier.
Yeah, you're playing with your glasses. What's going on over there?
I don't need them right now because I'm not reading anything.
You now have reading glasses. You're going to know what it is to have reading glasses and lose them all the time.
Well, no, that's you.
What I have to do is I put glasses in every room in the house.
I know. And you
that
wear
way-
two. You wear one around your neck. You wear one on your face or on your head.
No, I don't wear. No, I wear one around my neck. The one I wear around the neck is when I'm going places. I know that I always have it, and then I try to keep one in the room. But the problem is, you put like
You set one down.
You're in the living room. You put a pair of glasses on, and then you go into the kitchen and you take them off and put them in there. And then the one that you have in the living room no longer exists there, and you got two pair in the kitchen. These are the middle-aged problems that you youngsters have to look forward to in
So
life.
you don't need two pair of readers in the kitchen.
You don't need two pair of readers anywhere, except I do.
You need 12.
But keeping one around my neck does seem to help, and now you get to figure that out because you're getting old too.
I'm 45.
That's right, and you get to have to. Well, you know what? Even at 45, you know what you're able to do?
Drink beer.
You can have beer.
Yes.
Our beer this week is a scary brew.
It is a
that
very
we
scary
picked.
brew.
It is. Tell the fine folks at home what we're going to be drinking.
Hold on,
today.
let me put my glasses on because I can't read without them. So this is
You're choking up. I'm going to do sound effects while you're doing this.
okay.
Go ahead. No, you're supposed to be talking.
No,
while
it
I'm
sounds like you're having indigestion.
Well, kind of, but it's supposed to go along with the.
Okay.
It makes much more sense when you actually say the name of the beer.
All right. This beer is called Altered Beast IPA. It is by Southern Prohibition Brewing.
Yeah.
Which is, where are they?
I forget.
Somewhere. Oh, they're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Oh, cool.
And
I drive through there many times.
That's what MS is, right? Is MS Mississippi? Okay.
And multiple sclerosis, but I don't think that's a state.
It's a state of being.
It is sometimes.
Okay, so this is Altered Beast IPA, and I'm looking for the alcohol content.
Probably not on there.
What the heck? Oh, there it is. It's 6.7 or 6.11? What
That's
is
not bad.
that? I can't.
I don't know. I feel like anything after the point is
My
kind of
readers
stupid.
aren't good enough.
How do you fix that?
This has lactose in it, so
What?
yeah. Just
Lactose?
if you're intolerant,
Why would you put
may-
lactose in beer? I didn't
Because
realize
it gives
that
it
was
a creamy
I
thing.
didn't know that was a thing.
You
All right, let's
didn't?
open this up and quit talking about it.
All right.
I'm going to try it out. The Beast, Altered Beast, right?
Altered Beast.
Altered Beast. Ooh, it isn't as dark as I expected, and it does have a little cloudy. I wouldn't say creamy, maybe creamy. I don't know.
It adds a mouth feel.
And I also noticed when the very last pour, stuff came out of it.
So it's got sediment.
Yeah, looking at all, see it swirling around in there.
Yeah, that's okay. We can handle sediment.
Somebody just got a little text.
I apologize. I should probably turn that
told
off.
me you just told me you did.
No, I turned off my Wi-Fi, not my sound.
Oh, all right. Well,
Totally
how
different
are you
thing.
getting messages if you turn off your Wi-Fi? Anyway, I'm saying it's very cloudy and very sedimenty.
It's pretty.
It's got like dirt in it.
It's pretty.
Shall we try it?
Yeah,
Shall we drink
it.
It smells very pineapple-y.
Well, it's an IPA. What do you expect? And it's actually not a bad IPA. I like the lactose addition because it adds that kind of creamy mouth feel.
Yeah,
Can you tell that?
maybe. What I get from it is grapefruit,
Absolutely.
but no bitter, and that's unlike any beer I've ever had.
Yeah, that's fun.
Grapefruit, no bitter.
Grapefruit, no bitter. That's my kind of beer.
I'm not used to that. All right, so we'll tell you in just a few minutes what we think, and really in a few minutes. We're not going to wait till the end of the podcast because on today's show are Halloween stories. We've been building up to this for a while.
We have.
So we got our Halloween stories coming up on the show. Several, we did some, and then several submitted by our listeners. So that'll be kind of awesome.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank you for that,
definitely.
all
Thanks
of
for
you.
participating. Thanks for you out there who considered doing it and then didn't do it.
That's fine
We
too.
still thank you for that.
Life happens.
That's right.
I mean, I almost didn't get mine ready.
It's hard to do when you have a regular life. It's hard to do the fun stuff too.
Yeah.
But we did. We're too old to trick or treat, so we just kind of aim our trick or treat
Speak for yourself.
energies into writing stories.
I am not too old to trick or treat.
So, are you going trick or treating this year?
No.
No.
I'm gonna hand out candy.
Okay. Well, we handed out. We've been talking a while about the Halloween parade.
Are you with it today or no?
Here in Atlanta, Little 5 Halloween parade. We've been building up. We decided we were going to do this way early this year. And we
Yeah.
kind
Yeah, we did.
of shot for the 19th annual Halloween parade.
In Little 5 Points.
Yeah. So we were in costume. We got our costumes ready. We were in costume. You were
I was Ash from Evil Dead 2
with your boomstick.
with my boomstick and my hand chain.
I was a kilted zombie.
Yes, and you looked very good.
It was my bloody face.
You were a wet kilted zombie.
Well, that's the thing. This was in 19 years, from what I understand, it's never gotten rained out. This one was full of rain. Our first parade became kind of a rainy disaster.
It was a horrible rainy disaster.
But it also depends on how you look at it, because here's the thing. My wife and I came down 2 hours early because they told us to.
Right.
I think we were the only people who paid attention and did what we were supposed to do.
Absolutely.
So we came down 2 hours early. We stood in the pouring rain for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 minutes before step off, everybody shows up,
Including me.
including you. The rain disappears.
Yep.
We step off in the parade at 4 o'clock and no rain. And so we get to get up and hand out stickers. Now, there was a tiny bit of drizzle. And then right at the very end, the rain started kind of picking up.
Yes.
So all of our stickers got a little wet.
They did.
But we were able to hand out a lot of stickers, meet a lot of people, say hi, and hopefully introduce some people to the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast out there and it's totally because of a sticker that you got during the Halloween parade, hi, how are you? I remember I gave it to you.
I saw you.
Right.
Yeah, I was there.
We know. We saw
Yeah,
you.
you were there.
Thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll continue to listen. This is a special show, but, our regular shows will start.
Our regular shows are special too.
Well, we don't do Halloween stories.
No, but we're special.
But it is special. And but you can interact with us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and Twitter and all that other kind of stuff. So thanks for checking in. And if you got a sticker and you're listening because of the sticker, send us a little email. Tell us that you're listening because of the stickers.
Send it to thisepicdisaster
Just so we know.
at gmail.com. That's
That's right.
thisepicdisaster at gmail.com. Send that to us and say, hey, I got a sticker and I decided to listen to your show and it's awesome.
So the Halloween parade is one of my favorite events in Atlanta. And even if I wasn't going to be in it, I would have still gone. I've been looking forward to it. But the rain definitely kind of made some people not show up. The crowds weren't quite as big.
Less than a quarter of people that are
Yeah.
normally there. They didn't have some of the vending booths set up because, you just can't.
Well, somebody I read on Instagram, someone who set up said that they did pretty good business even with that. So,
Yeah. And they couldn't do the live music that they normally have.
No, I don't know about that, but I mean, I didn't see any, and probably not, but.
Yeah.
But still, it was fun, and people showed up, which kind of shows you Atlanta, there's still, where there's fun to be had, people show up to have the fun.
I would like to mention that your wife has got very mature emotional IQ.
My wife surprises me all the time. As loopy, loony, silly as she is, she can be very mature in emotional content.
We were walking back to the car after she had stood in the rain for 2 hours and then carried a banner by herself in the parade with us while we handed out stickers. And we just immediately went back to the car, and she was a good 10 clicks in front of us. And she was like, she stopped, she turned around, and she said, please don't try to be cheerful with me right now. It's not you guys. It's me.
Yeah.
When I'm warm and dry, I'll be fine.
Yes.
And I just thought, that's awesome. And then immediately, what did you do?
I just screwed with her.
Yeah. What the fuck is that about? She was like on it. She's like, listen, I just need to say this to you. And then you were just like, yeah, poke, poke, poke.
Well, what you have to understand, too, is probably 5, maybe 10 minutes after we dropped you off, she was like, okay, I'm over it.
Well, she was over it before you dropped me off.
Yeah.
She was calling herself silly names.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just to be clear, she carried our banner during the show.
Yes.
I mean, during the parade. And she didn't have to.
No.
And she didn't really want to. But our banner people, we had some people who said they were going to do it, and they kind of had something else to do. So it was either going to be you and I carrying it, which we couldn't hardly do and give out stickers, or we had to pull someone in. So she said she would do it.
And she stepped up.
She was in pain. She wasn't really in a situation where she could walk, and she did it. And she got soaked, and I know she pondered divorce probably, but
Probably the whole time.
she did do it, but that's fine. And then, so I think I told you this. So that morning, so many things like happened to make this a disaster, but we still did it. And that morning, I'd had the banner mounted to a longer pole. No jokes, please. I know you.
You need a longer pole.
And because she was carrying it by herself, I decided to cut the banner off and put it on a smaller pole. My wife needs a smaller pole.
So she's little.
All I'm saying. So when I couldn't find my scissors. Scissors weren't working, whatever. So I found an X-Acto knife, and I was cutting off the thing with an X-Acto knife, like an idiot. I know how to handle X-Acto knife, but I was pulling it, and boom, it went into my finger.
Yes.
I mean, deep into my finger, and it went in here.
Bounced off the bone.
And where's the exit? You can't really see the exit now. And it went in, and you could see another little exit mark. And it didn't just bleed; it spurted blood.
Yeah.
So I got an artery. I got a bleeder, and it would not stop. And it kind of was. It didn't scare me, but it was freaky.
Did it make you ill to see that much blood?
But I knew something serious had been hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I hit bone. It went all the way in, way in. But it did it like that, just really, really quick. And so I had to put bandages and all this kind of, and then we were out in the water and the rain is just messy and all. It was just like one event after another.
And another event that happened that morning is we did have somebody that was going to help us, a friend of mine, but his costume that he was going to wear, he hadn't taken it out of the plastic bin it was in, and he had stored it differently this year over the off season than he normally did. When he pulled it out, it had mold on it, and it's something you wear on your face.
Yeah.
So that's not a
Don't
good
want to
idea.
do it.
No, not happening.
No.
So he couldn't join us, and he was bummed. And then he said, "I'm going to do it anyways." And I'm like, "No, you're going to get sick." And then he decided, I don't want to get sick.
Well, in spite of all that, we still came out. We pondered it. I mean, even when I was there, I asked my wife, I was like, "Do you want to go home?" And she was like, and she wanted to. She was like, "I definitely want to go home, but I just don't know if you need to." And you were on the way, and so twice I asked her that, and then I just like, no. And I'm glad I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did it too, because
it wasn't the ideal situation, but
but it was fun.
It was really fun.
I was drenched and covered in water,
and your boob was hanging out.
My boob was hanging out, which is always fun because
that was part of your costume.
I like to see my boobs. I like to touch and play with.
At
my
least
boobs.
one does.
I'm doing it right now.
Quit. We don't need to make that a part of the podcast. All right, so we need to kind of wrap this up really quick because we got several great stories coming up here in just a few minutes. So, did we want to do a quick? Let's do a quick Zamondo really quick.
This is a game of Would You Rather.
Yeah. And
basically, what it is we have some stones. We drop stones depending on what color stone we drop. That's the category that we get asked a Would You Rather question.
Yeah, and we do this every show. This one's going to be a quick one. We got to do it quick.
Okay, so my stone is blue.
That's right. So blue is appearance and embarrassment. Would you rather have non-functioning bat wings?
Non-functioning bat wings, but I'd have wings.
Yes, or 4 arms.
Oh man, can you imagine what I could do with 4 arms?
Yeah. So my question is,
I could play with my boobs and do other things.
Oh my God. You could probably because the bat wings are non-functioning.
Not the bat wings, the 4 arms.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. I was going to say you could play with yourself with the bat wings, but I'm just saying they're non-functioning, so you can't do anything with it.
No.
Although, they're non-functioning
really
in that you can't fly, or they just don't work. They're just like skin flaps. That would be disgusting.
Skin flaps.
But I'm also wondering if they're proportional to your size. So if they're bat wings,
are they tiny like
that? Are they really small skin flaps, and you're never going to get a date that way?
And then you just have to have those surgically removed.
That's it.
Yeah, it's like a skin tag.
Yeah, or now if they're bigger,
yeah,
and they're fun at parties, maybe that would be kind of cool.
And people would touch me all the time.
But then you got 4 arms. Although you can get more dates with forearms. Than you
I think
with
I
bat
could
wings.
get like a couple of dates at a time
I
with
think you could,
forearms.
too.
I'll be honest.
So you're going with the arms?
Yeah, I'm going with the arms.
All right, forearms there. Forearms. All right, here's my turn.
And that's kind of punny. Forearms. I have
I am.
forearms.
Mine is the
Do you get
purple.
it? You don't get it.
Purple.
All
I
right.
dropped a purple.
So purple stands for food ingestion.
Okay.
It looks brown on the card.
This looks brown too.
Sorry.
I'll just change it to brown.
Sorry, it's purple though. Okay. So would you rather eat a cup of someone's boogers?
Oh, I've done that before.
Okay. Or a cup of
really.
someone's pubic hair?
Oh,
Go with the boogers.
no.
Don't eat pubic hair. I mean, I'm sure you have in the past.
I feel like there's less problems with the pubic hair. Oh, this is just disgusting. I'm going to go with that one.
You're gonna eat a cup of someone's pubic hair. Like
wait, you don't condemn me because the alternative is eating their boogers. So you're like, what? You're gonna go with the hair? Personally, I would go with the boogers. And there's no good choice here. I feel like there's less taste with the hairs. Well, I guess it depends on the person. Now we're really getting out of the way.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, are you gonna make sure it's their pubic hair? Like, you gonna shave it off and get a cup of it?
I mean, at least I don't know.
It might be fun to have someone else shave your
but
pubic hair.
that's the thing. Is it just a random person, or is it someone you know? Or can you pick
Oh,
the
I
person?
wouldn't. No, rando.
Random
No,
person
God,
boogers.
no.
So too. I mean,
I'm not gonna eat some rando. Okay, stop.
all right, so this is the age level
Stop.
of our podcast. If you're listening at this point, you've never listened before. This is the kind of things that we do regularly that we
mean,
probably shouldn't do. I don't
Deep
think.
thoughts, really.
Yeah, I mean, right now, here's the thing.
Because
We
if you
can-
eat the boogers, you could end up with the disease because there could be viruses in the mucus.
Yeah, that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I don't think people want to admit is we do this and then we wrap it up and then we get on with the show. And there are still couples out there going, no, the boogers. No, I'm saying I would go with the pubes. And it probably turns into like a big thing.
I wonder if people have ever gotten divorced over one of our would you rather
Yeah.
questions.
I hope not.
I would do the pubic hair. I would do the booger.
That would one day that would like you watch these documentaries about why Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis split up. So that'd be like our thing when the documentary coming out. Like, they used to do the podcast, but they split up because they couldn't decide on pubic hairs or boogers. that would be our documentary.
Okay, so what we need to do now is get into these stories.
Yes.
And before we do that, let's go ahead and tell folks what we think of this beer so
Yeah.
that they don't have to listen to all the stories before they know. Because they're probably waiting with bated breath.
Oh,
right
I
now.
know I am.
How do you feel about this beer?
My breath has been baited for quite a while.
By beer.
Yes. And all right, let's remind them what beer it is.
This is Altered Beast, and it is by good. Go with the sound effects. Southern Prohibition Brewing, and they are out of Mississippi, right?
Yeah.
Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
All right.
And it's actually it's an IPA.
Yes.
Honestly, I have gotten away from IPAs because people have just it's almost like a competition. How much hops can you fit in
Yes.
one IPA?
Right.
They're just constantly shoving more and more hops in there, and it's to the point where it's just disgusting. But this one is actually really good. I like the fruitiness of the grapefruit because it's definitely prominent, and I really like the lactose addition because it gives it a creamy mouthfeel, which it's not dirty.
That's the name of my band.
Creamy mouthfeel.
Yeah.
I'm like 12.
It's a metal band. That's my metal band. Creamy mouthfeel.
Creamy mouthfeel.
There you go.
No, okay. So, and yeah, it doesn't have that get you back in the jaw kind of bitterness to it.
Well, all the things you mentioned are the same things that I feel about it. I'm not an IPA person. In fact, I don't think I ever rate IPAs well. It's just not for me. And when I drank it at first, it was just like there's that same grapefruity kind of taste, but it didn't bite back, and it doesn't have that really bitter taste that just I don't like. What this does do that I won't say equally don't like, but I also don't like is it's very, very fruity.
Very fruity.
Not just in a grapefruity way, but even the finishes are really sweet. It's a very sweet beer.
Yeah, it does have a sweet note to it that is a little excessive.
And it kind of cancels out the bitterness. So I'm a little bit okay with that. You know what? This would be a really good sour, actually, if they made this a sour.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the flavor on it is good. So So I'm going to do something. Do you want to rate it first, or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it. I'm actually going to give this one a 3.5.
Okay.
Because I would drink this again.
I was going to give it a 3, which might be the highest IPA I've ever rated.
Probably
a beer.
Yeah.
So it's a little better than average. I'm giving it a 3 because it's got decent flavor.
It does.
And I'm not an IPA person, so I'm just not going to rate it really high. But that's a high score
for you for an IPA.
in my department.
Absolutely.
So yeah, check it out. I hope that it's going to be around after Halloween. It's got a cool can too. That's
it does.
pretty awesome.
It's got a werewolf on it.
And if you like IPAs, maybe this is something you like. If you don't, give it a try because you might like this. That kind of sweety, fruity, not too much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still an IPA. It still tastes IPA. It's definitely the grapefruity kind of taste. But it might break out a little bit of the norm, and you might have something a little bit different.
So we're going to go ahead and get started with our stories
Yes.
now. Thank you for listening to our banter and our stupidity, which we spew at you once a week here on This Epic Disaster. And you can listen to us anywhere you can download podcasts, pretty much. However, I was told the other day by a coworker that he can't get our podcast on Spotify.
Really?
So we need to work on that. And if anybody uses Spotify and you would really rather listen to us there, because I know you just want to listen to us somewhere, we'll work on that.
We're supposed to be on Spotify, and we have been in the past. So it might be a problem with their link or something, but I'll check it. We'll look into it.
Until then, you can find us elsewhere, Stitcher, iTunes, etc., etc. And you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/thisepicdisaster. And you can email us at thisepicdisaster@gmail.com and send us whatever you want to send us.
Yeah, and we do encourage you to subscribe.
Yes.
And
rate.
It helps us out when you subscribe, and it also helps you out because you get them immediately to your device. And it just helps us out in the long run, just having the number of subscribers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because Apple Podcasts and all the other podcasts, look at those numbers. They're not personally anything we care about. But
No, not really. We just do this so we can sit together and have a beer.
Yeah.
Anyways, enjoy the stories. We'll see you soon.
All right. Welcome Home by Doug Johnson.
Not a moment passed after she disappeared that he did not miss her. However, the last thing he ever expected was to find her in their bed next to him in the morning when he woke up. It had been almost 5 years since she disappeared without a trace. No clues were ever found to where she went and what had happened. How she wound up back in the bed was even more of a mystery. But she looked beautiful, as if no time had passed at all. Beautiful, but something was not quite right. She was hard like plastic, like the traveling bodyworks exhibits you see in the museums. She was beautiful, dead, and preserved forever. He staggered to the kitchen to gather his wits and to figure out what the hell was going on. He grabbed a cup of coffee and his phone and walked to the front window to breathe for a minute before calling the police. There in the driveway, on the tricycle he could never quite get rid of, even after 5 years, was his precious little girl. Completely motionless, beautiful, and perfect.
A Blessing and a Curse by Patrick Wilcox.
Bob Whiteraven heard faint voices. The words sounded distant. It was hard to concentrate on anything due to the pain. The pain was understandable, though. Bob had just contracted pancreatic cancer. "Hey, get Wheezy over here to touch him," a man said excitedly. Bob was blessed. He was a spirit healer. He was the spirit healer. Only one spirit healer could be alive at a time, and for now, he was that one. With the help of his Cheyenne tribe, Bob had prepared himself for years. After many tests, trials, and spirit walks, he had expected some tremendous sign that his time as the spirit healer had begun. It was nothing like that, though. All of a sudden, Bob woke up one morning and he knew. He just knew he had the power to heal with his touch. Bob felt a trembling set of hands touch his bare foot where his shoe and sock had been a few minutes ago. Bob involuntarily coughed a stream of huge, hacking coughs. Just like that, Bob had contracted COPD. That blessing was also a curse. Bob now had the tremendous ability to heal any illness or disease by touching someone. The process wasn't easy on him, though. His touch basically absorbed the affliction into himself. Bob would bear the burden of the illness until he can purge it from himself, a process that could take weeks or months. Because of this, Bob avoided touching anyone unless he meant to heal them. Bob had never married because of the path he was on, but now he could no longer hug or even shake hands with another person. Life was simply lonelier without human contact. Rough hands touched him this time. In his mind's eye, Bob could see his liver blacken and decay. He was very familiar with cirrhosis of the liver, as he had healed that condition a couple times in the past. Unfortunately, illness caused by alcoholism were all too common on the reservation. Now Bob had it again. Being a spirit healer was exceptionally lucrative, though. In the past, spirit healers did their work for free. Bob collected a sizable fee for his healing power these days. Why not? Surgeons are well paid, and they don't have to absorb illnesses into themselves. Spending most of your time sick was not fun. Plus, Bob had expensive tastes. He lived on a 500-acre ranch with a garage full of expensive foreign cars. His favorite was the platinum-colored Rolls-Royce. It was the Rolls that got him into trouble. Another set of hands, another condition. Bob wasn't familiar with this one, but it affected his feet, so he guessed it was gout. "This is awesome, man. This dude is magic for real. Hey, wake Crazy Larry up. He's got to get some of this mojo." This morning, Bob had made an exception. He should have known better. Aurora, Colorado had some really rough areas, and he accepted $15 million to cure some CEO's mother of pancreatic cancer. She was too sick to move, though. Normally, Bob healed all of his patients at his ranch, where he could control the environment. He should have gotten his money back. The last thing he should have done was take that Rolls into Aurora. Even with the driver and a bodyguard, it was too big of a risk. Now Bob was paying the price. Straps were holding Bob down, but it was pointless anyways. He was too sick to move. Some street gang ambushed his crew as he slowly made his way back to the Rolls after the pancreatic cancer healing. His two big guards were no match for them and got gunned down in just a few minutes. For some reason, Lewis, the gang's leader, decided to taunt Bob before killing him. One shove was all that was needed. The thug just brushed his bare neck for a second, but that was all it took. Bob absorbed the junkie's drug damage and injection site infection. And Lewis knew, he instantly knew, that touching Bob had cured all of his ailments. Since then, Bob had absorbed a dozen or more conditions. He had been dragged into an alley filled with the homeless. Lewis made sure that everyone got to touch the magic man. Today was healing day. One by one, they all touched Bob and walked away clean and pure. It was too much illness. Some asshole thought it would be funny to kiss him. It must have been the man they called Crazy Larry, because that kiss brought with it a wave of psychosis. Bob's mind tried to rise above it, to think clearly, but it was too much. The crowd of vagrants walked away after Bob breathed his last breath. He couldn't do anything anymore. His power was gone. All that was left were the bloody corpses of two well-dressed guards and the shriveled, disease-racked body of Bob White Raven, spirit healer. 500 or so miles away in the Navajo Nation, Sarah Swift Doe quickly lifted her head. She knew, she just knew, she was now a spirit healer. She was the spirit healer. Sarah wondered what her life would be like now that she had gained this tremendous blessing. Or was it a curse? Brigid McGhee's by Rick Baldwin.
In the mid-1800s, Brigid McGhee's was the most popular pub and inn in the little town of Clonglash of County Donegal. It rested on the edge of Ireland's Brian Forest. The pub patrons were mostly local farmers of potatoes and livestock. Because of its position on the Inishowen Peninsula, the inn saw more than a small town's share of traveling merchants, sailors, wayfarers, and wanderers. It was popular gossip by the townspeople that Brigid McGhee herself was a practitioner of magic, sorcery, and the dark arts. It wasn't something Brigid ever discussed publicly, and understandably so. Her great-grandmother had been put to death in Clonglash decades ago for allegedly practicing witchcraft. Still, it wasn't unusual for a few locals to come to the pub and request a tincture for an ailment, an amulet for good luck, or in some cases, even a spell to eliminate an enemy. In 1862, a Scottish whiskey merchant named Melvin Fraser began stopping by Brigid McGhee's to stay at the inn on his way to and from Letterkenny. He quickly became captivated by Brigid, as did many of the men who came to the pub and inn. Melvin himself was uncommonly dashing in appearance, with crystal blue eyes, wavy gray hair and beard, and in his colorful Fraser tartan kilt. Brigid usually seemed immune to the charms of the men of Clonglash, but she found herself hopelessly attracted to Melvin. By all indications, Melvin seemed to return her affections. Brigid and Melvin were never seen around the village together publicly, although everyone knew they kept company in private. With several rooms to choose from at the inn, the couple could easily consort in seclusion, beyond the prying eyes of nosy neighbors and tongue-waggers. And that they did, for several weeks or months, depending upon who one listened to. One early, foggy morning in September of 1862, Melvin was seen by a local dairy farmer departing the inn at 4 a.m. The farmer claimed he heard two voices shouting and arguing, and then saw Melvin's carriage speed off from the inn. For the days following, Brigid seemed distant, and she was continually in a foul mood, snapping at customers and serving the wrong drinks, something she normally never did. Her good friend Anne Donnelly approached her and inquired as to the source of her annoyance. Brigid explained she had, for some time, been suspecting Melvin was faking his feelings for her just so he could sell his Scotch whiskey. She said he frequently pressured her to stock his whiskey in the pub, and when she delayed a decision about it, he would become irritated, aloof, and even rude. Early one morning, Melvin aggressively confronted Brigid about a decision, and she asked him to leave. He became furious and slapped her face. He vowed he would return and burn down the pub and inn. Brigid produced a dagger and threatened him with it. Melvin left the inn in a rage. One blustery late October evening, Brigid was working a particularly busy shift when Melvin showed up at the pub. This time, however, he was not alone. He had a painted-up and powdered female companion on his arm, a woman with a fur wrap and a frilly decorative dress that exposed ankles and bosoms. Without hesitation, Brigid approached the couple to take their order.
A Fraser Scotch whiskey, and one for the lady.
We don't carry Fraser Scotch whiskey here, and from the looks of it, we got no ladies either.
I hope you washed the sheets this week. We'll be staying at the inn tonight.
Like hell you will. There's plenty of barns nearby you can pen up your livestock. With that, Melvin and his companion arose from their table and headed for the exit. As Brigid held open the door, Melvin turned with a smile and tipped his hat to her.
Happy sowing to you, Miss McGhee. Enjoy the Scotch whiskey.
The couple laughed all the way to their carriage, and Brigid slammed the door behind them. Manky bastard. He can stick his Fraser Scotch whiskey far up the Fraser hole under that kilt. In the wee hours of the morning, the last drunken pub customer left Brigid McGhee's. Brigid locked the door and counted money from the day's business. It was her best take of the month. She extinguished the candles in the pub except for the one at the bar. Exhausted from the busy day, she had a mind just to sleep on a bench right there in the pub. Sudden shouting cut through the dark, quiet morning.
Fire! There's a fire! The inn is burning!
Brigid rushed outside and could see the inn was completely consumed in flames. She ran to the burning building to see if everyone had safely escaped, but could see no one standing around the inn except the two local farmers who'd been calling out about the fire. By all appearances, the inn guests were trapped inside. There was little that could be done. The small town had no fire department, and by the time buckets of water could be carried there from the closest well, it would be useless. She continued to hope she would see a person run out of the inn, but with each passing moment, that scenario was unlikely.
Look! The pub!
Brigid turned to the pub and saw flames circling the walls of her establishment. She hurried to the front door, but it was too late to contain the fire. She could only stand and watch her pub and her inn be reduced to ashes. The light of sunrise revealed a smoking pile of embers where the two buildings once stood. It was a total loss. By now, word had spread all across town, and people came to help and to gawk. 7 souls had been lost at the inn. Brigid wandered around the grounds to see if anything material might have remained intact. She could find nothing. Something dark close to the edge of the forest trees caught her eye. She moved closer and could see it was a wood whiskey cask. It was one that didn't appear to belong to any of her regular spirits. As she approached the cask, she saw a brand scorched onto its wood surface. Fraser. She remembered the final words to her from Melvin Fraser.
Enjoy the Scotch whiskey.
At that moment, Brigid realized Melvin had used his own Scotch whiskey to accelerate the fire, making good on his vow to burn down the pub and inn. The events that took place following the fires are a matter of much discussion and debate by pub patrons and villagers all across County Donegal. There are those who, by oath, swear they witnessed Brigid riding a broom across the night sky, screeching like an owl that she would seek her revenge. Some believe, with the assistance of black magic, she took upon herself the form of a bat to move from place to place. What can most surely be verified, however, is Brigid McGhee, in human form, never returned to the village again. What also is known is on just one more occasion, Melvin Fraser was seen in Clonglash. On the 31st of October, 1862, it was Anne Donnelly who discovered Melvin's body in a forest glen behind the pub ruins. His bloody, detached arms and legs were neatly stacked, strung together like tinder and wrapped in his Fraser Scottish kilt. From a tree branch, his torso dangled, supported only by a length of rough twine tied to his manhood. A year after the fire, most of the people of Clonglash had moved on with their lives. Many still spoke of the fire on occasion, and several memorials had taken place that year to remember the dead of the inn. Anne Donnelly and her husband Mac rebuilt the pub, and it became as popular as it ever was. Mac Donnelly intended to offer Scotch whiskey to the pub customers, but Anne intensely objected, knowing how it was Melvin Fraser's Scotch whiskey which brought tragedy to the village. Mac argued it would bring in a good amount of money, as the Scottish spirit was quickly becoming a favorite in public houses across Ireland, but Anne would not relent. Not this spirit. Not for the people of Clonglash. Not for their pub. Not for Brigid. It was on the 5th anniversary of the fire that Brigid herself discovered that Connor Quinn, a longtime bartender, was secretly selling Scotch whiskey to customers of the pub. Witnesses say Brigid, appearing as a glowing, hazy fog, seemed to swoop into the pub and swirl around Connor's head. He began to cough and gag and gasp for air, eventually fainting dead to the floor. Connor's Scotch whiskey barrel, hidden under the bar, burst open and spilled its contents onto the ground and Connor's lifeless body. An intense flame sprang forth and consumed not only Connor, but every pub patron who was drinking Scotch whiskey that night. Before departing, Brigid's ghostly voice swore she would take revenge on anyone who dared to drink Scotch whiskey at the pub or anywhere else she could find them. No one in Clonglash ever challenged Brigid's curse again. They all saw firsthand what would happen if they defied an angry Brigid. Scotch whiskey was permanently banned from the town, but there were many in neighboring villages and towns and across the world who ignored her words and still, even today, continue to drink the spirit, paving the way for an inevitable encounter with the wrath of Brigid McGhee.
The Display by Adam Wilhite.
It was October 1st. a day that the man in the old house at the end of the street looked forward to with great anticipation every year. It was on this day each autumn that the man resumed his decades-long tradition of transforming his home into a Halloween wonderland for the neighborhood as well as himself to enjoy. As the man eagerly went about his business, carefully removing and unsealing crate after crate from the dusty attic, Gothic vampires, skeletons, ghosts, and ghouls of all variety were rediscovered. After completing his task of resurrecting each piece to its former glory, the man stood back and looked upon their ghastly faces with a soft smile. You see, the man led a solitary life, especially since the death of his wife, and having these treasured old friends back for a visit after 11 months of hibernation filled him with a warmth and spirit that he would only capture during this sacred time of year. Over the following day, the man went about constructing his yard haunt, lovingly showcasing each creepy character in the designated spot, being careful to ensure that each would receive its due notice and attention from the hordes of onlookers who would visit the now famous attraction each evening throughout the month. Surrounded by cobwebs, cauldrons, coffins, and the like, the stage was set, and it was their time to shine. There his loyal companions faithfully stood guard throughout the witching season for everyone to enjoy. Everyone, that is, except for Sherman Egbert. Sherman was a very crude, spoiled, and hostile 14-year-old boy with a much-earned reputation that preceded him in the neighborhood. Very large for his age in every sense of the word, Sherman was almost always the suspected culprit behind any ill deeds on the block, from the stuffing of Miss Klinsky's mailbox with manure to the large breasts applied in blue spray paint one night to the hood of Mr. Campbell's prized classic Cadillac DeVille. As Sherman sat on his bike one afternoon and watched the house from down the block, with smeared chocolate on his mouth and half a Pop-Tart peeking out from his cargo shorts pocket, he thought about the previous Halloween when the man scolded him for jamming his dirty fist into the candy bowl, breaking the 2 pieces of candy rule, and helping himself to a handful of treats. The man had also remarked that his soiled T-shirt, which read, "Tell your mom to stop calling me," hardly qualified as a costume. Sherman's eyes narrowed and a smirk crept across his face as he thought about what he would do to the man's precious display later that evening. Around midnight, Sherman slipped out of his house, dressed in black and carrying a large backpack containing a hammer, eggs, and cans of spray paint. When he reached the man's yard, he immediately began swinging his hammer wildly in one hand while pressing down on the paint nozzle with the other. Within a couple of minutes, the yard display lay in ruins. As he made his way to the street, Sherman turned around one last time and hurled a dozen eggs. Content with his work, Sherman retreated to his home for a celebratory tube of cookie dough. A little while later, Sherman lay in his bed watching Cinemax after dark when he heard a whisper. It was soft at first, but began to grow louder. What was being said was difficult to discern, but soon the voice was joined by additional persistent whispers until it became a loud chorus which seemed to be coming from outside. Frightened and confused, Sherman jumped out of his bed and peered out of his upstairs bedroom window. There on his lawn stood a large group of shapes, all staring up at him. Within just a few seconds, Sherman realized with shock that these monstrous creatures slowly approaching his front door were the figures from the man's yard. In disbelief, Sherman slowly backed away from the window. He locked his bedroom door and turned off the light. He darted into his closet, shut the door, and huddled in the corner, clutching the bat he used for mailbox bashing tightly close to his chest. There he stayed for several minutes until the whispers eventually died down. After a while, there was a silence again, and a few moments later, Sherman opened the closet door. However, as he turned the handle, it jerked out of his hand, and the door flew wide open. There stood the large group of creatures, huddled closely together directly in front of him. Silently, they collectively stared and studied him for a moment, their black, lifeless eyes fixed on him. Sherman opened his mouth, but only a screech escaped as he fell to his knees. The figures closed in. The next morning, the man opened his front door to enjoy his ritual cup of coffee on the porch and to check on his frightening companions. Everything looked just as it had the night before, except for a strange new object he noticed that one of the ghouls seemed to be holding. As he looked closer, he discovered what appeared to be a pair of dangling eyes covered in blood and goo. As the man continued looking, it appeared that each of the creatures had obtained a new trophy of some kind. A skeleton clutched a severed hand, complete with chocolate-stained fingers, while a vampire by the gate possessed what appeared to be the lower half of a leg, and his large werewolf proudly held an entire torso. The man took a few steps back and surveyed the scene for a moment. Then his familiar soft smile returned. "Good job, my old friends," he said warmly, as he gave a slight nod and then returned to the porch with his coffee. Let's Play by Cheri Brown.
When I woke up, I could tell I hadn't been asleep long. As a matter of fact, it felt more like coming to rather than waking up. My head was so fuzzy, it didn't even dawn on me at first that I had no idea where I was. I was in a seated position and was wearing shoes, so I knew I wasn't home in bed. It was dark. What was the last thing I remembered? I'm not sure. I tried to lift my hand to my face to rub my eyes, but I couldn't move my arm. A twinge of panic went up my spine. I tried to lift my other arm, but that too was held fast. When I tried to look down to see what it was, my head wouldn't budge. There was something keeping me from leaning my head forward, some sort of strap. My eyes had finally adjusted enough to the dark that I could look down and see that my arms were strapped to the arms of the chair I was seated in. The restraints were thick leather with metal buckles. Panic was really starting to set in. My heart started racing, my mind screaming for some sort of explanation. I suddenly realized I couldn't move my legs either. They appeared to be strapped at both the ankles and my feet, but my feet were not on the floor. Then it hit me. I'm strapped in a wheelchair. Was there an accident? Am I in the hospital? Oh, God. Was anyone else hurt? Wait, why is it dark in here? This is really not right. What is this place? Where is everyone? Hello? I had to clear my throat. I was so thirsty. I heard something very low. A voice. Shh. As if to warn me to be quiet. The voice wasn't near me. Felt like it was across the room, closer to a wall. But where is a wall? How big is this room? I still haven't determined if I'm in a hospital. What? They don't know you're awake yet. What? What is this place? Who are you? What's happening? At that moment, the lights came on, blaring all around the room. There were what appeared to be two-way mirrors on the three walls I could see. I felt 1,000 eyes on me, but I could see no one. My heart started racing again, my eyes pleading into the blank mirrors, knowing someone was watching. Someone had to have some compassion. At least they could just tell me what's happening. Frantically looking around, I saw what appeared to be a winding racetrack around the room. The lanes had a number of switchbacks in them, and it appeared to be some sort of motocross course, without the mud and the jumps. The lanes were defined by small orange cones and something that looked like small black discs. Those are landmines, I thought. I got a good look at the wheelchair I was strapped to. It was one of those electric ones with a joystick attached to the right arm of the chair. My fingers could barely reach the stick. Suddenly, the chair started moving forward toward the entrance of the track. I desperately tried to pull back on the joystick, but I couldn't. In doing so, I hit the joystick left and right, and the chair responded. But I couldn't stop the chair. It was headed directly for the edge of the track. I hit the joystick again and managed to straighten out. And then I was on the track. I couldn't stop the chair. I could barely move because I was strapped so tightly. I have to navigate this track. Those are landmines. Oh, God. My heart was beating from my chest. I started to get tunnel vision and slightly lightheaded. No, now is not a good time for a panic attack. Focus. Focus. Using the joystick, I was able to get past the first turn without touching the edge, but the chair started going faster. What is this? Who are you? Please don't do this. Help me. I managed to get through the next turn and the next, and finally the last turn, almost to the end of the track. Just a little further. Tears were streaming down my cheeks as my wheelchair made it across the finish line. I'm not even sure at which point I began crying. Once I passed the end of the course completely, doors in front of me swang open. People dressed in very high-end clothes came rushing towards me. They shoved large TV cameras and microphones in my face. They were all asking me questions. How do you feel? Did you think you could do it the whole time? You should be so proud of yourself. And finally, are you ready for round 2? As the people started unstrapping me from my captive chair, I noticed that the two-way mirrors were just glass now. I could see inside them. There were a dozen people tied and bound, panic in their eyes. They all had numbers on their chests like marathon runners. Once my head was free, I could see that I had one as well. Some of the people were exchanging money, laughing, patting each other on the back, shaking hands, saying things like, "Let's see how yours does in the next contest. I've got money on number 8, and you can't win them all." I was yanked from the chair, my legs barely holding me up, shaking all over from shock. I was pulled through a door into the dark. I felt a sudden poke and a stinging sensation in my neck, and my tunnel vision, or whatever it was, enveloped me. My eyes opened again. I could tell time had passed and I had been out again. Once the blurriness from my eyes cleared, there's really nothing to look at. Is that plywood in front of me? I feel like I'm also laying on a piece of plywood. This is a plywood box. I'm in a very small plywood box. There's dirt coming in around the cracks along the side. Oh, God, I'm buried in here. I need to get out. Oh, this must be round 2. Farm Fresh Eggs by Rick Baldwin.
Fiona Blaine opened her eyes and tried to focus on the glowing red numbers of the digital clock. Without her glasses, she could only barely tell the numbers were 5:29, 1 minute before alarm. She reached over and clicked the off button so the alarm wouldn't wake her husband, Sonny. She sat up and fumbled for her glasses on the nightstand while giving silent thanks she was able to sleep a few extra minutes on weekends. Every morning for the past 52 years, Fiona had risen at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast for Sonny. Weekends meant she could sleep an extra couple hours and start breakfast at 6. Not today, however. Today was the Cock County Celtic Festival, and as he had for 49 festivals in a row, Sonny would be leading the parade with his bagpipes and full dress kilt. She would need to start breakfast earlier this particular Saturday. Fiona slung her cream-colored flannel robe around her body and walked quietly to the kitchen. She clicked on the light. In the middle of the kitchen floor lay Monster, their old black lab. Monster hardly cracked his eyes as Fiona opened the refrigerator door. She would start the biscuits first, and as soon as they went into the oven, she would fry the bacon, and then finally would be the eggs. The eggs. She scanned the contents of the refrigerator. Where were the eggs? How on earth could she have forgotten yesterday to pick up eggs from the grocery store? Sonny would be up soon, expecting his usual cheese scrambled eggs before heading off to the festival. She knew what he would say, too. He'd tell her this wouldn't have been a problem if the door to the chicken coop hadn't been left open a year ago September, when, in the middle of the night, a fox or coyote or something had entered the coop and killed their 5 good laying hens. Fiona didn't remember leaving the door open. And Sonny said he certainly never would have done such a thing. It was the biggest quarrel they had had in years, and Sonny finally just said to heck with it, he wasn't replacing the chickens. They'd have to just start buying their eggs in the grocery store like the city people do. And that's what Fiona would have to do this morning. Go to the all-night grocery and pick up a carton of eggs so breakfast would be ready when Sonny awoke. Grabbing her rabbit coat and the keys to the Lincoln, she quietly slipped out the door to the garage. At this hour, there would be no one at the grocery store who would give one care she was still in her sleeping gown. She adjusted the car seat and mirrors from Sonny's regular presets, turned the key, cranked up the heater, and headed down Sussex Road. Cooper's 24-hour grocery was only 3 miles away, so she had plenty of time to park, grab the eggs, and get back to the house before Sonny stirred. For a second, she worried Monster might bark and wake up Sonny when she returned, but then she realized it was, after all, Monster. That dog hadn't barked at a soul in 7 years. Fiona saw the old church cemetery and knew she was halfway to Cooper's. Ahead, she saw an unfamiliar old wagon on the side of the road. The headlights of her car illuminated a cardboard sign with the words, "Ordell's Farm Fresh Eggs," scrawled on it. "Thank you, Lord," she said out loud as she pulled the car over. It wasn't unusual in Cocke County for local farmers to sell their products roadside, so she was grateful this would save her 10 or 15 minutes. The morning blue moon dimly lit the wagon stand with the help of the car's scarlet tail lights. Fiona approached the stand and could just make out the shape of a human figure wrapped in a blanket. "Good morning," she said loudly. "Lordy be, you sure did save my life. I was starting breakfast and realized I forgot my eggs. I'll tell you what, I have never done that before. I don't know what's wrong with my head lately." She looked at the dark blanket and tried to make out a face. There was no movement. "Are you Ordell? Hello? Is someone in there?" A hand stretched from the blanket and pointed at the eggs. "My husband sure loves his eggs, so I'm going to take a dozen," she said. She collected 12 large eggs and put them in a small basket. "I'm just thankful you were out here and kept me from having to go all the way to the store. How much do I owe you, Ordell?" No response came from the blanketed figure. Fiona placed a $5 bill on the stand. "I'm going to put this here. You just keep the extra for your trouble, you hear? Have a good morning, Ordell." She ignored the silence coming from the blanket and hurried to her car. "He probably doesn't even speak English," she said to herself. "Poor man is trying to make a living and can't even talk to his customers." When she returned to the kitchen, Fiona noticed Monster had relocated to the bedroom. Breakfast preparations would need to begin immediately. She put the basket of eggs on the counter and grabbed the biscuit dough from the refrigerator. She always made enough dough for the entire week and had just enough left for this morning's biscuits. She kneaded the cold dough until it was warm from her hands, and she rolled it out and cut it into round biscuit shapes. When the oven reached 425, she put them in. She placed the iron skillet onto the large burner of the stove. She pulled off 4 long strips of maple bacon and laid them on the hot skillet surface. She thought about how they looked like little flesh bandages, and she watched them begin their bacon dance, shrieking, wrinkling, squeaking, and popping. The grease bled from each strip and bubbled in the pan. The wonderful bacon smell began penetrating all corners of the house like some savory specter. She knew it would soon seep into the bedroom and gently wake her husband like no alarm clock could. The strips reached their perfect stage of crispiness, and she placed each one on a paper towel, then carefully poured 3/4 of the pan's liquid into a container marked bacon grease. The remaining oil would provide just enough flavor for Sonny's cheese scrambled eggs. Fiona retrieved the basket of eggs from the counter and a plate from the cabinet. She took biscuits from the oven and placed them on the plate next to the strips of bacon. She sprinkled cheese on the plate as a bed for the upcoming scrambled eggs. Sonny was the only person she'd ever known who liked the cheese on the bottom of the eggs. He always said it made the cheese more melty. She cracked an egg against the side of the iron skillet. Fiona was aware she wanted to scream when the first cold, slimy tentacle whipped out of the egg, but she was prevented from doing so when it wrapped twice around her mouth. The second tentacle was thinner, sleeker than the first one, almost like a lizard's tail. It ran up the back of her neck and sprouted tiny little fingers that twitched and spread across her scalp. Two of the fingers dropped down her forehead and pushed through her eye sockets. Her glasses fell to the floor, and she got an immediate feeling she would never be needing them again. From the eggshell in her left hand plopped what appeared to be a dark, bristly ball of mucus. Without glasses, one might think it looked like an almost developed fertilized egg, an embryonic chick wrapped in a yolk sac. But without glasses, one wouldn't be able to see the veins and filament and pulsating fluid that in just a few seconds had pushed the miry mass to 3 times its original size. Fiona slumped over the stove. Her consciousness began to fade, and all she could think about was, where is Monster? Why doesn't Monster hear any of this noise and come running to the rescue? Then she realized it was, after all, Monster. That dog hadn't heard a single noise for the past 5 years. A large cord burst from the egg mass and pierced Fiona's chest. It injected a yellowish liquid into her heart and pumped the liquid throughout her entire body. Almost instantly, her body melted and exploded into a glob of golden bio-goo, which coated the cabinets, the iron skillet, and the front of the oven. The egg mass and all its extremities liquefied with the goo it had created and dissolved. Monster entered the kitchen. He had intended to sleep on the warm kitchen tile, but he noticed something dripping from the oven. He slowly waddled over to the stove and licked the pool of goo in front of the oven, and then the oven door itself. He walked back to the middle of the kitchen, turned in 2 circles, and laid down to sleep. Sonny came into the kitchen looking the way he always did before going out in Highland dress. White shirt, Prince Charlie jacket, white hose and gillies, and completely nude around the hip region. He always waited until the last moment to put on his kilt. He would usually sneak up behind Fiona and give her a hug, and she'd reach around and give his bare behind a squeeze. But this morning, Sonny didn't find Fiona at the stove. Monster was in the middle of the floor, and Fiona's robe was in a pile in front of the oven. Where was his wife? He looked in the living room and the second bathroom with no clues to her whereabouts. The car was in the garage, and Fiona's rabbit coat was draped over the rocking chair. He thought maybe she had gone out for a morning walk, as she would sometimes do. That's probably what she was doing last year when she left open the door to the chicken coop, he muttered to himself. Or maybe she just went to the end of the driveway to get the mail or the morning paper. At any rate, he was confident Fiona would return at any moment. Sonny went to the stove and saw the plate of warm biscuits, crispy bacon, and tasty cheese. He stirred the contents of the iron skillet and from there dished out fluffy yellow eggs onto his plate. He sat down at the table in his full regimental state and gave a silent prayer of thanks for the food before him. He scooped a heap of cheesy scrambled eggs onto his biscuit. The cheese was all melty, exactly the way he liked it, and the eggs seemed fluffier and sweeter than usual. Fiona had outdone herself this morning, he thought. He looked out the kitchen window and watched an old wagon pass by the house and thought about how Fiona had made his breakfast every day for the past 52 years. This morning, he thought, may have been the best he had ever had. He wiped his mouth. Damn good eggs.
This is a Violet Jester Media podcast.